Dreamers can't be tamed.
Oh,
line. Now,
Mhm.
I don't think it can be fully because you miss that. You really do miss that social aspect, which is
yeah.
the part about experience, which I think you mentioned as well. So wait, let me back up for a second. So I know you always had this idea, but
Uh-huh.
was it just something that you actually thought can happen because of what you just said? Like you just researched it, or something?
No, it's actually something that can happen because when we entered the XQ Super School, we made it to the final round.
Yeah, I remember you said that.
And to me, there are schools that are doing this already. There are models that have done this. Therefore, rich socioeconomic classes like that
Mm.
high class, upper class, or maybe upper middle class. But if we can make it, if we can create a model that does it for, youth at a, lower middle class or middle class, that would be something that I believe can transform communities. And my goal is to, the way I see it happening is to be able to create these schools that maybe are charter or even private schools that have this concept and actually deliver on providing value in terms of real application and students that actually are self-sustainable and you know go for what they dream and what they believe in based on the teachings at our school, and then use those monies to be able to create this concept in urban environments
Mhm.
in areas that can transform communities as a whole. So the other aspect that was in that proposal was that it would be a hub, a center for the community at large, meaning it would provide services such as lawyers for immigrants, health services, languages for speaking classes, English classes for people who don't speak English in the community, uh, connecting with entrepreneurs and organizations that are in the community to help thrive it, to help develop a small economy within there. Um, that was the other big concept around it.
Well, stop there because I do like that because I think that was what I kind of envisioned what could happen at like when I was at Pal Park because it was a massive immigrant population.
Hmm.
I don't really know how it is now, but like they were coming in groups.
Yeah,
And you can't you can't ask the parents to support the kids if they one have trouble. They never went to school either.
yeah,
Two, they have trouble understanding language. They don't even know the system. And so if you can open up the school at night, or like you just said, the center should just be like even what you're where you're at, like you envision that to be around the clock open, available to everybody. I think that's what you're mentioning here. Like schools are just they operate because people just don't want to be there or they can't be there contractually or whatever. So what I was thinking again, going back to it was like providing somehow classes for these folks to like at least understand how school works through a
hmm
lot of things. Obviously, we're missing a lot of things like because there are a lot of dialects, so having someone translate is very difficult. And then just the space and the time, obviously, that even now is even more off the table in terms of a public sector thing. Like you can't do that in a school at this point. It's
no, you can't.
forget it. But even still, even if there was another space, it's still hard to do. But the idea is what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying. I think that's what we're relating, if I
Yeah,
understand that correctly.
you're absolutely right. Right now I think it's interesting because what happened with COVID is allowing teachers to see that, and allowing the education industry to see that you don't need teachers to teach content all day. You
No.
don't need teachers to teach content all day. What you need are people to guide and facilitate education, and what type of education. And that's where we can utilize people more effectively. Let's utilize teachers to do what they do best, to teach what they're passionate for. So now they're actually invested in making a difference and not receiving a paycheck, right?
Yep.
It's a little bit of that as well. And I think with the community hub, like you were talking about, how it can be like we're underutilizing the resources that a school has, period, right? The facility itself, itself, that it can host a whole bunch of different things for not just students, but for parents, right? Educational services. We can get businesses in there from the community that can help bring the community together.
Yeah.
So there are a
Well,
lot of opportunities. Yeah.
stop there again. So you mentioned the entrepreneurs, right? So another thought I always had was like, again, at a small level, there are a lot like yourself. There are a lot of people from Pal Park that created their own businesses, and just in general, the community always did that, right? Like Broadami is just a whole bunch of families that just opened up their businesses. But I know a lot of people that did that because we're somewhat middle class, upper middle class people that have immigrant roots that just like developed, did their own thing.
Hmm.
Didn't really like this whole like corporate thing. Anyway, the point was, I thought maybe there would be a way to create that like community of all people that alumni that have created their own businesses, and like you said, yeah, share, like if you need legal services, like I know when we did the athletic hall of fame in Pal Park, there they started that a couple of years ago. There were people coming back, and that brought them back,
Hmm.
and guys that are like NFL agents, right? Like some they would bring the players to the hall of fame, and like that starts the movement of getting everybody involved
Hmm.
in a small, like again, in a small community, right? I don't think it expanded from that, but that's what's missing is like, oh, you have this common bond of, yes, the school or the community that you're from. People always are like, oh, Pet Park sucks because it's changed. Well, you can always come back and make it whatever you want it. Not just our community, it could be anywhere, right? Like I don't think people are so removed from their hometown or hate it so much. There's just nothing there to attach them to it.
There's nobody there to lead a structure or develop a structure that makes something different.
Hmm.
It's we attach ourselves to the status quo of what's actually occurring, and not understanding that these paradigms and these concepts and everything that's built has been built by man. So if it's built by man, it can be destroyed and it can be changed.
Yeah.
So it's really just taking having the courage to be able to do that. And if we can develop leaders within communities that are willing to adopt a structure or a template that allows schools to change in this fashion and utilize their resources differently, utilize their personnel differently. Now you're talking about effective change and bringing those people back who grew up in that town and utilizing them and their resources to develop something new and better.
Yeah.
And I think like right now is a great opportunity because you're seeing how schools right now are being underutilized, and that you don't need teachers to actually teach content anymore. You don't. It's no longer needed. And that means we can reallocate monies elsewhere.
It still has to have that educational component to it, right? Because, and I'm thinking because you said high school students, if you're like a ninth grader and you join the Life Academy, but it's not for you the next year and you got to go back to your regular public school, how's that work? Like,
How do you adapt?
well, not,
Yeah.
not just adapt, but like they can't go back to ninth grade and repeat like English one. You know what I'm saying? Like those classes have to be there just in case they
Yeah.
go back, right?
Yeah. So in the proposal itself, it has those fundamental concepts. It's just not that a teacher is delivering it.
Hmm.
We can deliver that content, that specific content via technology. It's there. Now it's really about a facilitator guiding the experiences, whether those are assignments, whether that's application of algebra into a business, whether that's working with and understanding how we utilize this information in our real world lives. Like once we leave high school, how do we begin to utilize all the skills that we learned in high school into actually application that allows us to go for what we believe in and what we dream of doing with our lives.
Yeah. All right. Actually, I think you rephrased it the way that now I'm just getting coming back to, because remember I mentioned in our that text there was that the same kind of center. I think I don't know if you checked it out. It's that Learn Life.
Hmm.
Like I'm kind of interested. They have some sort of conference coming up. Why I mixed it up with that because I started going down that path is that like they're not doing like this tradition. They're just doing strictly like experiential things. Like they're just
Hmm.
building things and not applying it. I don't know if they're doing it or not, applying it to like like that's in place of your math class or something. Like, so I got to come back and remember what you're saying is different from what that is. That's why I posed that question, but like it was weird when
There are
it.
a bunch of schools that are doing this. So, for example, there's a private school in New York City that just opened up. I actually got a summer gig with them during the summer while we were in quarantine. They hired me to do a sports management class,
Hmm,
to develop the curriculum for a sports management class. And their concept, the reason that I wanted to work for them was because their concept is very, very close
hmm,
to the Life Academy concept. It's for rich kids. It costs like 45 grand a year to go to that school, just like a college. So I was like, but the awesome thing that they had was like they allowed kids pre-COVID to go to different campuses that are around the world. So they had like 3 in China, they had 1 in Dubai, they had 1 in Washington, D.C., they had 1 in California, and they just opened 1 up in Brooklyn.
hmm.
And these kids can go to the different campuses and learn from professional athletes, from top leaders in the world, top teachers, and they're using technology to deliver the information, but they're giving children the experiences and the connections with the people that actually know how to use that information.
Yeah, and that I agree too, because that's always what I wanted to know. Like how, yeah, how do you actually? That's that was the gap, right? From how you read it in a book to when you actually experience it,
Hmm.
and you don't want to figure that out later. Like you want to, like you accepted a job at like some banking firm, and you're like, no, this really isn't what I wanted. Like you want to figure that out earlier. I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, that's really the thing. So if we can create a high school that allows children, just children, to get a piece or a taste of what that industry looks like, now what you have is somebody who understands and makes a decision earlier in life in going for what they believe and what they're passionate for, or what passion they want to develop, because I believe passion is developed. It's not something that you find.
No, right.
It's something that you go through the shit and you sacrifice so much and you fell in love with just trying to achieve it, that it develops into a passion and you just keep going because you're just obsessed at this point. And you allow a child to go through that discomfort at the school, and facilitators are actually guiding the process and saying like, hey, this is part of the process, this is part of finding out what you love. And then they leave to college or they leave to the real world, and now they have a better understanding of what it is they want to do, which essentially saves them money,
Yeah.
saves them a whole lot of money, creates a happier person with a better understanding of the identity, how to overcome obstacles and challenges, and then really pursuing what you love and making an impact on the community or the world.
Yeah, and if you can add to that, it actually teaches you what you don't want, right?
Yeah,
Because like
exactly.
you see, that's important too. And I think that I spent a lot of time again figuring out what you don't want by going through it. Like you don't need to do that. You should kind of know it beforehand.
Exactly. And that's what I want to create. So it's I believe that if we can get I believe the money's out there. I believe talking to the right people and discussing, creating a clear picture of what is the concept we want to deliver and to what demographic and how this can change communities.
Hmm.
You find the right people, whether it's philanthropists, organizations, investors, who give the seed money to be able to bring a team together and really build the idea and the structures and the procedures that need to be put in place to actually make this happen. And then you start small. You create a school, 1 class, 9th grade,
Yep, of course.
50 kids, 40 kids, and you implement and you start it in a community. Like me, the ideal community would be something like West New York or North Bergen,
Where
right?
public schools overcrowded,
Exactly.
they're not reaching everybody. So you pick off 50 of those kids. It doesn't affect them. You're actually doing them a favor.
Yeah. And there's state funding for that. Like the state will be like, hey, listen, we'll give you X amount of dollars for each kid. All right, perfect. If we get an investor or a philanthropist to say, hey, give us, $500,000, now we got a budget for 1 class that pays maybe a personnel of 10, 15 people to like cohort this class, and not just talking teachers, but different personnel, administration, board members, all this stuff, to actually continue building this and putting things in place. And we see if it works, and we see how they score, and we see if they're able to apply, if they see if they're happy with themselves. If the one thing for me that drives me crazy is like tracking the data, not just the grades, but the data, the intrinsic data, the individual, the identity, the person that they are. How do we start to quantify this and display, hey, this shit works?
I think that was that's where we left off on one of our last discussions, is how do you survey the data properly? And in my current role, I find that very hard to find the proper metrics, right? Because it has to be quantifiable, I think is the correct word. Like it has, right? You have to kind of show it in numbers, but how do you do that if it's somewhat of a feeling kind of?
Feeling. So it's funny because, all the books like Growth Mindset, we looked at some other stuff like Firvana had a survey on internal locus of control versus external locus of control. Then you have like the grit assessment. And what we did is we ran the renewed mindset curriculum this weekend with our team. And we created an assessment with a mixture of those questions. So we looked at internal locus of control, we looked at their grit, and we looked at their growth mindset. And you saw the baseline data. And then we took another sample questions, we mixed it up again, not the same questions, but similar questions that address the same properties. And we got that data. And there was a growth. It isn't perfect, like the assessment needs to be done, but I was like, holy shit, we figured out a way to quantify someone's the growth in mindset.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, we're getting closer. It can be done. This can be refined constantly to be able to understand. And then if we get the other idea that I had in terms of quantifying that feeling is the actual, the student's personal reflections. Mm-hmm. So video reflection. So what we did during the renewed mindset weekend, we had them record their feelings after every activity, and what they discovered and what they reflected on. And that can be used as data. Now, this is where it becomes a little bit tricky in terms of privacy, things wanted to be shared. That's where that goes in, but we can show somehow, I don't know how, but if we can take those reflections and show like, here's how the person felt, here are the cues on their body language, here are the cues in the words that they used with themselves versus somebody at the end, because we can quantify those things. If we can say, hey, people who have this particular mindset say these words X amount of times when they speak about this subject.
Right.
Then we're like, this is the type of mindset they have, versus somebody who has a different mindset, a growth mindset, uses these types of words X amount of times during this particular subject. Now you're saying, look at this. Now you can quantify it somehow. That's a lot of work, but just going down that path, I'm just starting to think.
Okay, wait, let me write down my questions here. So one, I thought, well, I guess you did try this already, which is like, you started as a small program. Like, is there a way that, or your vision is obviously just do it from the beginning. Like you start the year, it's a class. It's not like an after school program. It's not something you want to start small.
No, it would be something that's completely different. There are enough people that are having these conversations that are willing to take the risk and come together to build something like this. It's possible. You know why? Because here at Vita Project, we have a team of 10 members and no one's getting paid, and they're all sacrificing in order to make this mission real. That proved to me, I'm like, these are all basically kids that we have here with, and if you look at their demographic, waiters, trainers, admin, not really, like maybe a bachelor's degree, not really much experience in the professional world, right? Like education world.
Mhm.
public speaking, things like that. These are individuals that are at that level taking that high of a risk to be able to do something that's bigger than them. I know teachers that are in pain, struggling, trying to get through the year, and knowing that they don't want to teach anymore,
Yeah.
but they do want to be a part of the education world. Where are those individuals? Where are those administrators that are willing to take that risk as well and bringing that team together? And I think if we look at that, we can actually build a school versus trying to build something that's just a class or something like that that goes real small. You know?
Okay. No, I wanted to just check that because there is that model and I've seen it, right? So the example I seen just here in Jersey City, when I had my little business, it was in this like gym,
Hmm.
fitness center kind of thing. They rented out a room to this dance studio or this dance company. They outgrew that. They ended up taking over another gym,
Hmm.
their building, and now they're right next to me in this like fancy swanky place with a huge monster studio that had to be expensive. And so I'm saying there's that model, and that's been about 3 years.
Okay.
So they went from this one class in a room that they probably like approached you and say, hey, can we borrow your room every Saturday for a bunch of kids that are going to learn dance? Now they got this like massive studio and it's like a real dance studio. So I didn't know if you're aiming for that type of model or you're just like, fuck it.
I
There's
feel,
there. We'll just use 2 of those rooms this year and we get what we need and
yeah,
go.
that's how I feel. Like I really feel that the education world is desperate for something like this. Not for the rich, but for the people who cannot afford it. People who struggle to get something like this.
Well, and so that's exactly again going back to Pop Park, right? My wife's still there. The kids, they're not missing class because they're lazy. They're missing class because they're working,
Yeah.
right? They're not trying to miss school, but because they don't have to physically be there, they're working so that their families can live in an apartment with 15 other people. Like, so if that was available to them at their own time or whatever,
Hmm.
that would be
And,
better.
and that's, if you look at the concept, if you read more, the school, we thought about, we get a contract, we partner with Samsung, where Samsung would create these kind of these watches where there would be a desk similar to like how you see at Vita Project, and they would check in, and basically there would be a couple of facilitators there that would, have the conversation with them, say, hey, how's it going on, where are you working, what experiences have you had, have you gone to see this entrepreneur, have you gone to this organization to do this assignment, have you worked with several of your peers, and it's all based on how the student looks at their day and wants to function. So if they're working during the AM,
Go for it.
go for it, do what you got to do, and come here, at 4 o'clock at night, meet with your facilitator, you know, do what you have to do, and start learning about yourself.
So if anything, it's kind of college, but bringing it down
Bringing it down, yeah.
without the stress of the academic part and the cost.
Yes, yes. Because essentially, like, look, what is college actually doing?
Yeah, I mean they facilitate. Like I read everything on my own, right? I asked someone that took the class before me. I asked the person, whomever, the way that I learned and why I actually became a teacher is because there was a girl I was trying to hit on. She didn't understand accounting. I taught her accounting. I'm like, actually, I just figured it out for myself too. Maybe she'll say yes to dinner, which she never did. But at least she got better in accounting. I did too. And I ended up being a teacher. So like it works, like that facilitator model is what I mean.
And we can do it better. We can enhance it. We can make it. And even, let's say, how about the kids that can't read? How about the kids that can't do math? Well, college does the same thing. They give you remedial courses.
Yeah.
Why are we not able to address it in that way either?
Well, and the current model of just public K-12 education is that you have to leave them behind because everybody else has got to move forward.
Yeah,
So
it makes no sense.
And the problem I always had was I never worried about the kids at the top. It's the same thing with sports. I never worried about the kids that scored all the time or that like were really bad. It's everybody in the middle, right? There's a lot of people in the middle, right? Cross country, I was always a middle guy, right? I was always 5'6" guy. Like that's an important spot, right? So like you have to develop that person to
Hmm.
move up. So like yes, I think going back to your idea of like West New York, a lot of kids in the middle that are like they're not paying attention to me or this is stupid, I'm in the wrong spot. Those are
Yeah,
the you want to get.
exactly. And as a teacher, that's very stressful because they put you to focus on in terms of scoring, in
Hmm.
terms of testing. You focus on making sure that your top ones don't drop
Yeah.
and trying to get the bottom ones to come up
Yep.
because the middle ones are like they're going to score middle regardless, whatever.
Yeah.
And those kids, believe it or not, are actually the ones with the mindset most of the times that want to learn. The ones at the top, in terms of Carol Dweck's book, their growth mindset is very limited in the sense of like when you give them something that's challenging, they don't necessarily lean into it because they're afraid they're not going to be good at it.
Yeah.
And the ones at the bottom don't have the confidence to even attempt it because they think they suck at it. But the ones in the middle are the ones that are willing to try it.
Hmm.
Those guys, like for me, when I focused as a teacher, I focused on the middle ones.
Hmm.
So, like the ones that were there, I tried, I helped, but I took my top ones and I had them teach the bottom ones because they already knew it. I was like, all right, you guys got your shit, teach them. I focused on the middle ones, and that allowed the dynamic of the classroom to kind of come in as a little bit of a community, and it helped the class elevate.
Yeah.
But what happens if we can do this on like a larger scale,
Hmm.
like with 50 students or eventually 400 or 500 students, and then duplicate this all across in different cities around the world or around the United States specifically?
Yeah. And again, it just comes back to coaching, right? I think it's the same thing. Uh, like on the track team, I just always took the kids in the middle because there was the biggest group.
Yeah,
Right? The good kids, at least like the whatever our distance team went with my wife because she would kill them and they would be better. They would get better at their level. Kids
yeah,
who couldn't handle her workouts would come to me.
yeah,
They would develop, and then we would actually have a team to where we almost got to a point where we almost snuck up on somebody and won something. Um, so it was a little bit of everything, right? And then those people, why going back to what you were saying, is the people in the middle actually become the leaders, right? People at the top, it's so easy for them. They don't actually know necessarily how to be a leader. They just want to go out and win
it's
and get
good.
people.
Yeah,
The people in the middle are the leaders, and that's what you always need, right? So that was what I learned from coaching sports is that you're not developing winners. You're trying to develop leaders because they all gotta know how to succeed when it's not going well or find the success in whatever they did. And so I
yeah.
think that's important.
So right here at Vita Project, what we're doing now is in January, we're going to be rolling out a new version of how Vita Project is going to function. So as you know, Rancis and I had developed many different kind of curriculums from, strength training to mobility, to mindset classes, personal development, finding purpose, like having those conversations. And we built course curriculum. So what we call them are personal journeys, personal paths. And in those is a 6 to 7 month window of a personal journey where it's based on your goals. It's based on an assessment of how you view yourself, the perception you have of yourself, and what you desire in life. And based on those assessments, we give you a personal path. So, like for one, it's like the warrior path. A warrior is somebody who needs vulnerability, who's willing to look at themselves in when they aren't good or when they aren't allowing themselves to grow. So in there, you have this concept of like, yeah, Man of Steel, the strength training program, but then you have a course on vulnerability, on leadership, on all these different concepts, on mobility, how to take care of your body, how to start growing in other aspects, not just going 100%, but addressing to your thinker, your victim, your ego as a whole. And that allows the person to develop within the current mindset that they have about themselves and start changing. We have another one that's called self-love. This is somebody who's like not secure about themselves. They don't believe about themselves. Every word that comes out of their mouth is like, I can't, right? Or I don't accept myself or stuff like that. And we have different classes throughout the 6 months that will allow them to start developing self-confidence and understanding and love for themselves. So we have these 4 paths, and we'd bring a cohort in, almost like a school. We'd assess all of them, baseline assessment. They go on their different paths. Through the 6 month, we're assessing. We have small assessments for each class. So each class is assessing them daily, every single time they join into a Zoom call, or they jump into one of the strength training classes or one of the outdoor classes, whatever. We're assessing them based on these markers, certain markers that go across the board. And then at the end of the 6 months, after they finish their course load, they have a culminating piece, which in this case would be the renewed mindset weekend. And they would apply everything that they learned into that renewed mindset weekend. And they would complete a journey. And then we reassess them and we see their growth from the beginning to the end. I would like to execute for the high schoolers, it would be a little bit different. It has to be a little bit different. There has to be, education courses in there, math, science, all those things, like you said, addressing those aspects. But if we can create a similar structure where they get a course load, like what we used to call them in the proposal, it's called explorations. They're called explorations. Oh shit, they're called explorations. Yeah. And it was a 3-month exploration based on what they desire to learn and how they connect to the subjects of math, science, history, English, literacy, all these different things. If we can do that and have facilitators lead in that and using technology to be able to deliver the actual content and then create experiences that allow them to apply the content, now we have a structure or a model that may work theoretically. We need to see based on the data, but that's my idea.
So one, it sounds like the program there has developed because now I guess you have folks that are going through it.
Yeah.
Is important. So it's cool that you were able to execute on that. And it sounds like, yeah, you had those models where you had the baselines, you have them do their thing, you assess them, and then a culminating project, which sounds just like everything that you do in school. And I think it's still, if this does work with kids, it still runs parallel, because that program sounds like it's, let's say, 3 steps ahead of this idea.
Yeah.
And so you already have that and you're iterating on that, which I think is important. When you say it like that too, so I'm relating it and seeing all the things in the business world now, right? Like all these processes, these are like buzzwords, right? There's this thing they call it like the Agile Method. I'm like, we did that every day as a teacher. You do that every day as a coach. The idea is like you go 2 weeks, right? You have a plan for 2 weeks. You check out how you did in 2 weeks. You evaluate the results, and you go back to like what you need to fix, and then you bring that in, and then you do that. I'm like, wait, that's what you do every day as an educator or as a coach. Like every week is a new test, right? So I'm like, why is this such a big thing? But I finally realized it's like a lot of people never played sports, or a lot of people like did it. It just, I was like, why is this such a big popular business term that you have to get certified in, or like you need experience? Like you had experience in this. If you were part of a team sport, you did this every single day.
Well, that's why athletes tend to be better businessmen
Correct.
than anybody else, because they understand that process.
Correct. Yes. Yes. I right. And that is what, like, that's what something that you want to put forth in this organization, in this academy, is like, yes, you actually have to be a part of a team sport, whatever.
It's funny that you say that, because right now I'm struggling a lot with the team. So, my personality even as a coach is I'm tough. Like, I believe that you need pressure. I believe that pressure is necessary. I believe that feeling good isn't always necessary. I believe that sometimes in the suck, you learn a lot of stuff. And a lot of the team members here haven't been on an actual team.
Mhm.
And I made that connection with Rancis the other day. I'm like, Rancis, you do very well with a lot of our team members because a lot of them haven't been on a team. You've done one-on-one coaching, private coaching for the majority of your life. And when you were in high school, you went to martial arts, which is a one-on-one sport. It doesn't require you to be connected to anybody else. So when you're talking to somebody and you're explaining the why, and sometimes the why is too direct and their feelings get hurt, they actually limit the team from moving forward because it's their personal ego that gets in the way. Now, as a business, do we have a job to do to make sure that we can coach them out of that space? Yes, absolutely. But how much time do we waste on it? So we made that correlation, and it was just like, yo, the fact that they didn't work on a team doesn't allow them to see those sequences on how you continuously improve. And I was
Yeah.
like, and this is because they don't teach this shit in school. They
Yeah.
don't. They don't. Everything is on your own. Everything is one-on-one based on yourself. And even when they make you do group exercises in a classroom, there's always one kid or two kids at most that just take over the entire thing.
Correct. Yes.
And the activity is not designed to be able to for them to count, like rely on each other enough. And
Mhm.
it's because it's not always like sitting down and doing a math project doesn't always rely on you, relies on the person who knows the most math and understands the concepts the well. Like, hey, you know it, I'm just gonna follow you.
Yeah.
But if you do something with like physical movement, right? Like in sports, there is no way that you can do it by yourself. No
No.
fucking way.
Right. Exactly. So like, no matter the rules are, if you're talking basketball, there's supposed to be 5 people on each side, right? Like, well, even if you played 5-on-4, it's still, you still have to figure out how to work with each other and make it up. But yeah, there's no excuse for the physical piece. You have to see that person stress. You have to see that person succeed. And then you all have to do it together. Even if it's just like doing a workout in class, right? If you're doing it with 4 people and you do it 3 times a week, that's a team, right? Like, to me, that. But like you said, ultimately there has to be some pressure, so there has to be some competition,
Yeah.
that has to happen.
You gotta watch the documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you saw it, but it's called Playbook.
I don't think I saw it. No.
Watch that. It's all about coaches. It's all about coaches and their perspective on how to coach and how to like the first one is Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers explains, him as a coach, but he explains what he did and what he went through when he went to the Celtics and he first landed Garnett, Pierce, and Ray Allen on the same team. And it was so interesting for me to see him and the way that he thinks. I was like, holy shit, that I took some of his concepts and I applied it here because it's so powerful. So one of the words or one of the core values that he has was Ubuntu.
Yeah.
Ubuntu, do you know what that word means? Yeah, so like you are as I am, we are one.
Mm-hmm.
I put this here as I proposed to the team. I was like, I want to introduce a different core value and I want to remove one. Actually, I wanted to add one, and Rance is like, we're gonna remove one and replace. And they all accepted. And since that day, all of them, Ubuntu from the top, like they're all about it. And it's brought everybody so much closer together
Mm-hmm.
that they can understand how to deal with each other in terms of conflict, pressure, and holding each other accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, who teaches that in a school right now? Like I, even as a teacher, didn't do that. I didn't make the students hold themselves or each other accountable and actually have conflict with each other.
Yeah. Well, watching them conflict with each other as a teacher, you're like, no, let's not
No,
do
no,
that.
stop. Yeah.
But sometimes, well, on sports teams, I let it happen though, right? Because you get a little more leeway, right? Because technically you're in the locker room, just get it out, right? And hopefully you come out better, which is
I
tough.
got a question for you. Do you believe that the opportunity gap can be closed with academics? Or do you believe the opportunity gap is closed with intrinsic understanding of self.
I think it's closed through opportunity and everything you're saying, yeah, awareness and just confidence, right? I think it's what did I learn from coaching at Power Park? It's all about confidence. Everybody comes in there like, I suck, I can't do this. But
Mhm.
we give them the opportunity to succeed at some level, right? We had the kid in 2 months lose like 30 pounds, right? And he not that I was mocking him, but like I made it a point to point him out, like he's the last one on this track, right? Like he's the slowest one, you know that. But look at him. He looks physically better. He's here every single day. Like he's shown some improvement. But so the point I think I'm trying to make is like I think it's just opportunity, it's confidence. Like you said, it's the awareness that they are improving themselves.
Yeah.
That you close the gap.